anytime the time changes, my energy levels go to like a different level. Like when the sun stays out longer, it gets later. Even though I'm a nighttime person, it makes perfect sense because it gets later. I mean, it gets dark later, right? So it makes perfect sense for me. I love it. I love it when it gets dark about 8:30, not 5. You know, it's weird, right? Because it's like freezing cold. You go outside and it's freezing cold, then it gets dark at like 5 or 6, almost like you're living in Alaska or something. It just needs to go away, man. We need to, it's springtime. It's time to plant seeds. It's time to uproot some stuff. Let's go. Okay. So tonight is Thursday. It's the last show of the week. And I wanted to kind of recap what we've been talking about all week. But I also have brought my colleague here onto the show, Coach Chris, because I feel like if a schmo like me and a spiritual guy like Chris comes on, we could talk about this thing that I've been talking about all week. And the question has been pretty simple. It's not super mystical. It's not super fanatical, but it's important, right? So the question is what if your mind basically could whisper secrets from beyond and we could catch it on tape? Yesterday's question was, is your consciousness yours? So we've discussed these sleep studies, these spindles with people that are coming out of comas, right? We've discussed this. We discussed, I guess, what would be considered the quantum field, which we'll get into more. Like, I want to talk about that more. The whole microtubule quantum field. What is consciousness? What's this quantum soup kind of thing? It doesn't need to be difficult. And I think, you know, if we just talk about it and try to break this down in layman's terms with each other, you know, we don't have any teacher here teaching us about this stuff. We're just regular people. But if we look into it enough, I think we can kind of figure this out. But I do have a theory, and I wanted to bring Chris on because Chris kind of keeps me grounded too, and we all love Chris's story. What's up, Chris? I'm glad you're here, brother. Nothing like last minute. It's good to be here, bro.
Joe?
So
I'm glad to be here too.
So I know you're busy. You might not have caught the last 2 shows, but you actually sat in on what is it? Hammeroff's. You sat in on a session where he was talking about microtubules, or what was he talking about? Tell us your story
exactly
about
what
that.
you're talking about. Well, I don't have much of a story to tell besides the fact that I knew who Stuart Hammerhoff was from that book. He was a part of What the Bleep Do We Know? I got a bunch of books, as you know, and started collecting more, and so I picked up that book off the shelf. And Stuart Hammerhoff was going to be in town. He is a professor at the University of Arizona, and he was giving a talk. So I signed up for it. It was like 3 hours long, so intense. After an hour, my brain was just fried. I couldn't even keep up. He's so well versed and talks in such language that if you're not in that field, you just get lost in the sauce. But I understand that he was trying to break down consciousness in a scientific way. Basically, like with every blink, your mind is in a quantum way giving you reality. Like basically you're in charge of your own reality. It kind of makes it seem like it's all happening as you experience it.
Right.
It is the way he explained it, but
yeah, like we're in this quantum soup that we're creating instantaneously as we're experiencing it instantaneously. It's weird, right? So the way and what you just said is kind of perfect. And another thing too, I want to get into tonight, as we get deeper into this discussion this week, is I want to go back and look at the Gateway experience, the CIA document that went and studied Robert Monroe's institution and their report there, because they also talked about this as well, right? So if I can break this down, yeah, man, like the document that the CIA released about when they went and researched it. What'd you say?
I printed it out a few years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's great.
So, but when you study people that are like in comas and anesthesia, That's what I was trying to recall last night's show. So the first night we talked about sleep spindles, the little frequency spikes, those waves that they can see when people are coming back. So if you have CMD, cognitive motor disassociation, I think that's what it is. I could probably butchered that. And you're in a coma. 76% of people that see these spindle spikes came back, right? They came back. The lights came on, and within a year, they had their independence back. So we talked about that. Night 2, we talked about what happens when we go under the knife, like in anesthesia. Because for me, all that seems to just go black. It seems to go dark. Okay. So this kind of gets a little eerie. So I don't know if you guys have seen that movie Waking Life, or if you've had a false awakening, or if you've been in a situation where you couldn't wake up from a dream. And I started thinking about this, like, what if your mind is really, those spikes are like you whispering secrets from beyond, and we're catching it on tape, like the little spindles that are going up and down. The doctors are looking at it, but you're inside your mind going, get me out of here. You know, I mean, come on, man. It's creepy. It's real. I'm not talking about anything that's not real here. So let's dive in a little bit. So let's say, for example, before we get into the quantum field and stuff, I just want to recap this. So let's say, for example, Jane, who's my age, let's say she's 42. She crashes her car. Her body's still, but her brain's still alive. And they don't know this. But when they put her in the hospital, and this isn't really happening, I'm just saying Jane Doe, they put her in the hospital, okay? She's in a coma. Based on this study, they can see the spindles going up and down. Jane's like, she's still there. Her brain's still alive, buzzing like a little code, you know. She's locked in. Science, the doctors can see it. But she can't really shout back. So stay with me here, okay? We'll make the stakes a little higher. This isn't sci-fi, all right? 2025 caught this live. It was a study that just got released actually a few days ago where they talked about it. The article just got released anyway. But what is she saying in there? What's going on? We don't know. We know what our dreams are like, but we don't know what's happening to a person that is in a coma. Only thing we can do is hear their stories, okay? So what spindles are little short brain buzzes, like a Morse code, like it's just going beep, beep, beep when you sleep, okay? And it shows this, and I left a link in the past 2 shows in Nature Medicine. Columbia's team saw them in 226 coma patients. Now, reading from this document, the raw stuff, listen up. Well-formed sleep spindles were present in 34% of patients. 76% of those with WFSS and CMD showed consciousness by discharge. Okay. So that translates to, if we go back to the little story of Jane, the buzzes means she's got a 3 in 4 shot to wake up if her mind's secretly on. Okay. Now, CMD, or cognitive motor disassociation, is Jane. I've also thought about Gareth too. Okay, I just didn't want to mention that in case Gareth's listening, but this has made me think about all this stuff. So Jane is awake inside of her body. Is she really inside her body? But she's awake. She can hear us, but she's stuck in there. Okay. Now spindles are the clue. They're the little thing that's showing us, hey, Jane, she's in there, banging on the walls, right? Let me out. Let me out. I think they've actually made movies about this stuff. It's like ghosts on a screen, but real and trapped. It's, you know what I'm talking about, Chris? Like, I know I've just briefly covered this study, but anything that kind of proves how consciousness works, or how consciousness works, like compared to our bodies, I'm kind of fascinated with it because I like science too. But you smell what I'm stepping in so far, don't you? If you don't, let me know.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, there's these machines that can pick up on your brain activity even while you're out. So are they assuming that's you're alive in there? Jane Doe is alive in there?
Yeah. And the studies have proven that with evidence so far, I mean, 76% is a large number that when they see these spindles, these people are going to wake back up. They're going to come back. But when they're in that coma and you can see the spindles, are they, I just had an eerie thought. Are they like in there where they're like, man, I'm just, have you ever felt like you were stuck in a dream before? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, it has. That's terrifying. You wake up and you're trying to get out of the dream.
Yeah.
You're dreaming, trying to holler at your partner next to you.
Right. Yeah. So I've never been in a coma. Don't want to be in a coma. I've never, but I know it happens to people. So I wonder, and they don't remember, a lot of them don't remember the stuff, but I wonder if they're just like stuck in this long thing, or if they're actually cognizant and awake, like you and I are awake, but they just can't freaking move. And they're like, hey, I'm here, I just can't do anything, kind of thing. That's what's got me tripping about it,
Oh my goodness gracious. That's scary to think about. I think if you were in an accident, I don't know. In my experience, I've had a couple accidents where I blacked out and there was no memory. I even lost memory leading up to the accident. And I can't tell to this day. It's one of my biggest questions in my own life was these two blackouts that I had. Was the blackout caused from the head injury, or was the blackout my soul checking out so that I wouldn't have to remember or experience the trauma that was about to occur? I don't have any idea, because in both experiences, I woke up after the event, have no memory of the event or even the moments leading up to it.
Yeah.
So where did I go?
I don't know, man. that's the trippy part, man. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, I don't think I'm gonna figure it out, but it just makes me think about what does it really mean to like be awake, so to speak. Like, are they awake like we're awake in dreams, or is it something, like totally different? But that's just as an example. Okay, so I'm just using like Jane, I don't know, as kind of an example. It's not a real person. Okay, so it just makes me, oh man, I can't think of the name of that movie, but there's a name of that movie where this lady was hypnotizing people, and when she hypnotized them, they'd be like trapped in their mind, like a prisoner, Have you ever felt somebody there, but they're not in the room, they can't speak to you, there's no one around you, but you could feel somebody there, kind of like, you could just feel that someone's there, but there's no speaking. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
well, yes, of course.
Yeah, like almost like you're being watched or something, like someone is there. Well, I'm getting to a point here. I think that like when we go in comas or under anesthesia, like we just we're just traveling in this like field or whatever. And sometimes and we'll get into the Monroe study here too. Sometimes people are pretty good at it. It isn't all just is like astral travel. I know we like to think of things separately, like dreaming, lucid dreaming, astral travel, consciousness. But if a person is in a coma and they have those spikes, I just have maybe one or two thoughts. Like, are they there? Are they trapped? Or are they actually not really in their body? You know what I mean? Based on what you're telling me, I'm kind of thinking it's not that scary. They're not actually trapped in their body. But it's kind of a trippy thought, because I have had a false awakening. And it wasn't, I mean, mine wasn't even, but maybe like 5 minutes, and it still kind of, freaked me out a little bit. All right. So yeah, so that's that point there about the spindles. So we understand spindles and what they are. A spindles it's kind of funny too. The only way that science can really measure consciousness is just little waves and bumps and frequencies. So far, that's the only way that they know how to measure it. Okay, right now, hopefully that'll change. Now, so yeah, sleep spindles are like short brain buzzes. So, Now, the thing that we talked about the night after that was that anesthesia seems to like shut consciousness off. But when we look into like quantum fields and this whole microtubule thing, that clues us in as to what's kind of going on. So let's give Tom as an example. So Tom, whoever Tom is, I'm just making him up. He gets in a car wreck. They take him to the hospital. They put him into surgery on purpose, and they give him anesthesia. And then through like spindle studies and looking at what's going on, the lights go out. So instead of like Jane, where she's trying to come back to consciousness, Tom's lights are going out when they put him under anesthesia. So where are these people, right? If they're not in their bodies and they're not Tom and Jane, so where are they? That's the question. Where did they go? Where does it go when it's dark? Where'd he go? And I want to kind of unpack this. Anesthesia is not just like sleep. Okay, it's different than sleep. But it is a clue to how all of this is a clue to how consciousness works in the body. And I think AR talked about this in the chat yesterday, where AR said that, and I don't know if you're here, but it was a good point. It's almost like consciousness has this, like we're in this soup until it attaches itself to the body. And when I've had out-of-body experiences, and everybody that's had out-of-body experiences, when they get out of body, they feel this crazy, like dense pull back towards their body. So there's something there that's trying to keep you attached to the body, almost as if it's addicted, or if it likes to, or if it's supposed to be attached to the body. Yet, when we're in comas or when we're in anesthesia, it doesn't really show that. All we do is see the lights coming on and the lights going off. So you're with me on that so far, right? I'm keeping you here to bounce back and forth off of, so I know that you're here with me picking this stuff up a little bit, because I don't want to get, this is kind of a complex topic, but I find it fascinating.
It's very fascinating. Stuart Hammerhoff got into this topic of anesthesia, and that's what made it so fascinating. And here's this guy, a professor at the University of Arizona, a science man, trying to explain to this group of people, like 40 people, and I guarantee you 90% of them were as lost as me. He was trying to explain to us how consciousness works and how anesthesia it basically turns off your consciousness. There's no way I could ever explain how he explained it, because he took 3 hours to explain it. But he brought up this whole anesthesia thing because that's been my experience too. I've gone under enough times to where the last time I went under, I tried my hardest to stay awake as long as I could, and I stayed up. I stayed up longer than I made it past the number 10, and I stayed up to the room and much longer than I did before. But I can never remember anything. You lose all your time. You wake up. It's scary waking up and don't even know where you are or what's happened. You look at your injury area and you see bandages, and that's crazy if science has figured out consciousness.
I don't think they've figured it. I don't know if they figured it out. I just think that, like doctors can see signs of it coming back to a coma patient. This is how elusive it is. This is why it's such a mystery. We can measure it. Well, that's what science does. It measures things. I need an instrument to measure something so I can get some data, right? And so sleep spindles, when people are in comas, only show, based on that research, that, all right, well, when we see these frequency little spindles, the lights are kind of flickering in this kind of Morse code thing, they're probably going to come back. It's a good sign based on their research. And yet when we do anesthesia seems to just shut off people's minds. So I think Hammeroff, when he looks into microtubules, and we'll get into that too, okay? So this is a big clue to how consciousness itself works as it relates to our bodies. Okay, I don't want to freak anybody out or take away the mysticism of things. Not at all. I think it proves it, actually. But microtubules, if you think about microtubules, think about like, and I've been looking at papers all day, so hopefully I don't butcher this, but I might. Think about like straws. They're like little bitty straws, mega microscopic little bitty straws in every brain cell. A straw inside of a brain cell, so small that you would need like a mega microscope to see it. And Wellesley, in that eNeuro article I was talking about, he says that these straws hum with energy. And anesthesia, and Hammeroff is what he's saying, I think, is anesthesia jams them up. So that's what knocks Tom out. So when they give anesthesia to a patient, those microtubules, it jams the signal to those straws. And so you're unconscious. Does that make sense?
It does. Just can't imagine how they figured out what to inject into our bodies to make.
I don't either, man.
And not kill us. Just
Dude,
keep us on the edge of death, basically.
So have you looked into what they did for anesthesia? Like, you don't ever want to do this, okay? If you're kind of a sensitive person, don't look into the history of anesthesia. But we should be thanking the gods that they found what they have now, dude. Because they used to pretty much poison people, to knock them out back in the day. And even before that, they didn't really do that. They would just literally knock you out or make you bite down on something, But I don't think they figured it out. I think what happened is that they figured out that propofol does kind of put people under, but I don't know. Do you remember if he said they figured out about the microtubules before or after they started doing, before or after we evolved our anesthetic science? Like we were.
I couldn't tell you.
He probably, I don't know. I'd have to look that up though. Now, I'm just saying all of this is a clue. Okay. We identify as, like I said last night, I'm Joseph, you're Chris. That's Christy, that's Purple Pencils. But when we go under and someone knocks us out, where are we? Because I used to think about consciousness as an on and off switch. All right. Like it's just on or it's off, and that's it. Now, anesthesia kind of shows that's like an off switch, kind of. But when you do look at the spindle research, the spikes, the little Morse code, that's almost like it's like rising, or it's increasing in consciousness. So it's not really an on and off. It'd be more like a volume knob. So I don't know. Now I'm starting to look at the mind like a radio, like it has a volume knob and an on and off switch. And the way you hit the off or on switch is if the microtubules in the cells are working properly, and it jams the circuit if they're not. Okay. So I just want everybody to like understand. I don't think we really have to understand anything deeper than that, unless you want to. But I understand that. All right. So we got microtubules. These things are tiny little straws in every brain cell, smaller than dust. Okay. They might, this is the theory, they might catch quantum waves like antennas. The little straws in your brain cells are like antennas that catch quantum waves. And the spindle machine that they have needs them to buzz, so to speak. So anesthesia jams them to fade you out. So we need the spindles to buzz them and the anesthesia to fade you out. Fade to black, so to speak, like the Metallica song. Now, if your mind if all of this stuff is like a hologram and your mind's a 3D picture from flat waves, we could say spindles are the rhythm of the wave, and quantum are the fields of power, okay? And microtubules would be the projector, like the void's big screen of life. So that would be if Jane was coming out of the coma, the microtubules light up, and the it's like a reboot. Okay. And then in Tom's case, let's say he got in a car wreck and they gave him anesthesia. They turned the volume knob off. They jammed the microtubules. Man, we're all over it, dude. I think we just took a 9-hour discussion and took it down to the simplest form. You and I just did that. I think we figured it out. Unless I'm being completely arrogant.
No, you did. You did a really good job of summarizing, for sure.
I can't study. I can't. These papers, they use so many big words that it takes a while to figure this stuff out. You know, they use a lot of big words, man.
So here's my question to you, because I'm trying to wrap my head around this: is the microtubule a physical part of our body?
Yeah.
So the wrench that I throw in it in my own world is that consciousness exists without a body. And what about memory?
Well, memory is like, yeah, that's a good point. Is memory just stored in the human mind, or is it stored somewhere else? Because our mind definitely has a storage.
If you're born with
center.
memory, if you're born with memory,
I love this stuff, right? I get what you're saying.
If you're born with memory, like my experience and other people have experience, then there was no body. I am of the opinion that our consciousness is retained without the body. And that's the one, like, we'll retain all our faculties without the body.
It's a trippy thought, man. Like, where does it all go? You know, like if you look at the quantum field as like the cloud, but that's not even that's not even a good explanation, because the cloud, as far as internet and storage is concerned, and memory, so to speak, if you want to look at it that way, it's just on a server somewhere that everybody can connect to. A quantum field is a whole different thing, right? So when you come into existence into your body, that memory that you get from this field, where does it comes from? That soup of quantum field, I guess you could say, theoretically. But how does it tie into your ancestors and all that? That stuff, man, it would be super hard to figure out. And I think this is where like the so-called Akashic records and all of that stuff comes from, right? I don't think they called them the quantum field back in the day or whatever. They just said, well, there's records of all this stuff. There's a storage center somewhere that keeps these memories somewhere in the void of consciousness, I think. It would be crazy if it was on a cosmic computer, though, wouldn't it?
Well, it took me a long time to watch that movie, Hitchhiker's
Guide to the
Galaxy. I just watched it in 2021. I had to sit down like 6 times before I finally got through it. That's basically what it talks about, it, right? It's all just a supercomputer.
Yeah, and they had that normality button. So when they would hit it, it would just randomly create some crazy random reality until normality returned. I love that freaking movie, man. So long, and thanks for all the fish, right? So
right, and I think even Elon not that I want to bring up Elon, but had said that, you know, that that we may already be a simulation. That if I know that he said that in some talk, and it seems probable that everything could be holographic. Like if your perception is your reality, like if everything that we're breaking down in microtubules, if we're just perceiving it, the observer. Are you the observer? Do you have to be?
Yeah.
But if I disappear, everything keeps going on.
So
right?
So think about it like this: if you want to break it down into science, okay, from a science kind of layman's terms point of view, because if there's any like real scientists listening to this, they're going to be like, what in the hell? But we're all just regular people. Okay. So it's like a radio station. You know how people say, yo, your brain's an antenna. Well, according to this stuff, that's pretty true. Okay. Studies tie into this. So if you look at the quantum field as the signal, then the microtubules, the straws inside your brain cells, they're the antenna. If it catches the waves right, you're conscious. If you buzz them like with propofol and anesthesia, it shuts the radio station off. The microtubules are the in an analogy or metaphorically or maybe even literally the antennas of consciousness in the brain. It's not consciousness. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't want people to get confused here, but the tubules inside your brain cells are the antennas that pick up consciousness or when it shuts off. Think about like when somebody like Dutchie called in the other night, someone says, man, if I hit you and knock you out, if your brain gets jerked hard enough, it just knocks you out. Now, it's hard to knock a person out. You can smack your head on all kinds of things and never get knocked out. You might see little stars, but you don't go unconscious. You got to get hit a certain way. It's got to snap a certain way, and they teach you that in boxing too. And you got to get hit a certain way where it buzzes, like maybe it rattles those tubules enough to where you just slip out of consciousness for a minute. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
It does. It's like your brain is the computer producing the image from the Wi-Fi signal. Let me read something to you. I began to look at the microtubules and how they might be processing information, and their structure seemed to suggest to me that they were some kind of computer, some kind of computational device, because the walls of the microtubules are very interesting hexagonal lattices with some beautiful mathematical symmetry that seem to be well suited for computational operations.
Yeah, that's it, man. So I know, dude, and I know this, like, we all want to think right brain about this, like super mystically. Well, I get it. You know, we want to talk about demons and thought forms. Look, I'm going to get into that tonight, how this stuff is actually real. But based on this data, I think it makes it even more real. And where did you read that from? It makes so much
sense. It makes sense. It's just a quote from Stuart Hamerhoff in that book. What the Belief Do We Know?
Yeah, that's a good book.
But it validates what I've experienced as well. I believe that. So, okay, I throw the wrench in because I think consciousness doesn't need the body but I think that the body can take a consciousness from another entity in. You
like walk-ins. That's what you're talking about, right? Like a walk-in, right, like, or whatever. Or like when you have when you pick up on a memory of somebody or a presence, like with your story, right?
What one might call a possession, where an entity uses a body. That's what I think that psychics or people unknowingly can allow influences of entities, spirits, or other consciousness the same way. Perhaps if you believe in that sort of thing, the way a consciousness could maneuver a Ouija board, or the way, a demon might take over an AI, and the computer being the host. Like our body is the computer for consciousness. That's where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I smell what you're stepping in for sure. This thing is so cool that it's like the human brain could literally be the greatest antenna that was ever created for consciousness. Mm-hmm. So when the microtubules play a certain frequency, let's say I mean, when the waves of consciousness are in this quantum field, let's say it plays a certain frequency, and the microtubules inside your brain cells vibrate a certain way. It's like it's playing your tune. It's playing the tune of consciousness in a body or inside Chris's body, and you're on that wavelength, right? But when you go into this stuff, it proves this stuff, man. Like when you go into anesthesia or whatever, you take propofol, it buzzes those. It literally buzzes those brain cells, the microtubules, like. So that would just be like moving an antenna or rattling the antenna, and it doesn't pick up the TV station or whatever. So you go lights out for a little while, and as long as that propofol's in your bloodstream, it's rattling those microtubules until it seeps out of your bloodstream enough to where your tubes get back into frequency and you wake up.
Have you ever heard that before someone gets abducted that they hear a buzzing sound like
yes, and that's dude, you're already ahead of me. You're way ahead of me already, but that's where I'm going with this too. Like when people hear sounds, snaps, even vibrations, or some people even say they hear like bell noises and stuff like that as they get into certain states of consciousness. Yeah, totally, man. So the question would be is are we all on the same frequency? Or are we all on different frequencies? Are we all like separate frequencies? I don't know. I'm just scratching the surface of this stuff. I find it super fascinating though, because this would explain a lot about the OBE experience and help us explore these realms of consciousness even more if we could begin to understand it. But I'm the kind of guy that I need a picture book. Just like when we were little kids and you read the story and then you turned the book around and the teacher showed it to the class, That's what I need. I need that to understand some of this stuff, right? I think. Yeah, it helps. I think about like this. Like, why do you have genetic memories? You ever hear of people that they have memories of things of their like great grandmothers, great grandfathers. They have these, and they call it like ancestral karma or whatever. But if you look at it from a more sci-fi point of view or a more scientific point of view, it could be a certain frequency that your family and all of the DNA genetic code of the microtubules that you have lock into in your family. And that's why they all pick up the same memories.
This is what I love that Stanley Kubrick, I think, is trying to depict, amongst other thing, in that movie, The Shining. People get all wrapped up in the moon landing thing, but this whole cycle, this repetitive cycle, could be the presence of something that you're not even aware of. What if it's just like what I experienced at the Cove? Like, what if it's just something trying to repeat itself because it doesn't know any better, and it's using humans as hosts that don't know any better? I think that people that have like this multi-personality, schizophrenia, I don't think they're sick. I think they have multiple consciousness possessions. That's my own opinion, of course, but
God, bro. Listen, if the microtubule thing is real, it would explain, and according to Hammeroff, this stuff is totally real. That would explain possession. It would explain even who's this in the chat that says in the YouTube chat, Jan Little, alcohol can cause an opening for a different personality. My first husband was an alcoholic, and when he got drunk, he had a totally different personality. It's like there's somebody else. Well,
100%.
I mean, that affects your motor function in your brain and all that stuff. But the important thing is, what if it buzzes those microtubules in an entirely different way, and they pick up a whole different frequency? They're not going unconscious, but they just become somebody else. Everything, I keep saying microtubules, but everything to me is about those things. to me. Like the brain has all these different functions for the body. It has a thinking side. It has a side that does, it's like a computer. It's just a big processor and storage center, but it's biological. So it can be rewired and it can do all this stuff. It has chemicals that help us with feelings and all these different things. But the microtubules have to be in some type of certain sync or some type of pattern for you to be totally 100% cognitive, conscious, aware, and who you are. And now we know that like anesthesia, alcohol, getting punched in the head a certain way, all kinds of different things can affect what happens to the, it's like a brain snap or a buzzing in the microtubule. And I'm not talking about, I mean, we're talking about stuff on a really, really, really small scale. Okay. Mega microscopic. These are little straws inside of the brain cells, like little straws of whatever. I'm still studying all this stuff, but it's pretty crazy to think. So if that's true, and it's a thing that like an antenna that picks up a frequency from this, and we'll get into the quantum fields and stuff. If that's true, then what about, damn, like, so when I have an OBE experience, why does it feel like I'm being pulled back towards my body? It's almost like I have to be back in my body. I wonder if that has something to do with those microtubules. It's kind of like, hey, you're on this radio station. If you go too far out, so to speak, that's a whole nother thing. But I'm just ADD in this, you know, because man, I've been under, bro.
It could be not that your consciousness is going to die, but that you're going to snap that cord and your body will die because your body needs a consciousness.
Yeah. I think that
not that the consciousness needs a body.
That silver cord thing is just like a metaphor that the mind makes up, because some people don't see the cord. Some people do, you know. But the fact is, though, is they tested rats, stabilized the tubes, and knocking the rats out took 69 seconds longer, which proves that those microtubules matter. They did studies with this stuff on rats. Right, so they would give them things to knock them out, like propofol or whatever, rats. And I know it's terrible. We do experiments on mice, but we do. It's better than doing it on humans. And when they gave the mice the propofol or whatever they did to knock them out, then they would do whatever I don't want to get into how they stabilized the tubes because I don't understand chemistry, but they stabilized the tubes, the microtubules. And it took them a whole minute longer to go unconscious while those tubes were stable. But eventually it caved in. Now that's pretty big, man. That's a pretty big thing. And I think Hammeroff probably talked about that. Did he talk about that? I'm sure he did.
Yeah, you would have loved that conference I went to. You should have gone. You love microtubules.
Yeah, right. Why don't I make a T-shirt about microtubules? No, it's mega microscopic. So the fact that, you know, propofol knocks.
He says they're everywhere. He says they're everywhere.
That microtubules are everywhere in the body, not just in the brain.
Right, they're everywhere and seem to organize almost everything that you're experiencing.
Yeah, I got to watch some more of this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, when we go under, man, we feel gone sometimes. Or if we drink and we take a Xanax bar, which is the dumbest thing in the world you could do, you black out or you die. But if you don't die, you black out. You're gone because it affects your consciousness. Not just affects that, but it definitely affects your cells. Anything that affects your blood and crosses the blood-brain barrier is going to affect the cells in your brain. And the cells in your brain have those microtubules in them, you know.
He says that they spontaneously collapse. Guess how many times a second?
How many?
Roughly 40 times a second, and that gives us a moment of consciousness. It gives us like an aha moment, and that our consciousness is not continuous.
What?
It's just like ratcheting through space and time. like a bunch of sequences of like now.
That's so trippy, man.
So it made me think of like when you draw one of those books and you flip it and you can like see the little kid moving.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? You can make a man running by just drawing in different movements and flipping through the book.
Spilled
That's
coffee
like
all over
what
me.
consciousness is.
Yeah, so so Jane's spindles fight to wake her up, while Tom's microtubules hum and then stop. Same thread, different ends. One's waking up, one's going out. And everything has to do with what's happening to those tubules or our antennas. Maybe it's not silent, so to speak. Like that's what the void is, right? When the tubules get to a certain vibration where you feel like you've lost everything and you're all alone, and then you go into this black silence and you're not, because what's his name? Frederick Ardema even talked about the void when he went out of body. He would find himself in this place called the void, and maybe that's what that is. It's where you just separate yourself from those microtubules, and somehow or another you manage to stay awake in the quantum field soup. I don't know. It's stuff to think about, but I got to get deeper into this because obviously, like, I'm barely scratching the surface with all the stuff I just read about it.
Have you heard of the Jane Roberts Seth Speaks material?
Oh yeah, man. Don't they have videos? Don't they have videos of her? Like, they have videos of her talking about, or they still have recordings of her channeling all that stuff, don't they?
I've never seen them. I just have some books, and I know there's graphs that show consciousness being a spindle sort of going on this line. So when you start talking about spindles, that's what I was thinking about.
Because it makes sense if Hammerhoff's talking about they're in everything, right? These microtubules. So this quantum field's expanded everywhere, like an ocean of tiny sparks everywhere. It's not woo-woo. It's not, okay? It's just physics. It's too small for our eyes to see, actually. But in Jane's brain, the awakening coma patient, these sparks power the spindles, okay? And in Tom's, who's going under anesthesia, his fade under the gas. It's like the juice behind the beat, so to speak, you know? Think a light bulb. A light bulb fields the power plant. Microtubules are the wires. Yeah. I'm having to put picture books in my head is why I'm doing it that way. Damn, it's already top of the hour. What were you about to say?
Nothing at all. Listening to you.
Come on, man. You were about to say something. I heard you pop off. I'm about to say something. You can step on me anytime you want. I'm loving this conversation. Well, do you remember what you were going to say, or did you just forget it?
No, I think just the wrench I have to throw in there is that if I was sitting with Stuart Hammerhoff again and had a chance to, like, you know, of course he would never take this question seriously, but does, you know, consciousness even need the body? Because I know he says they're everywhere in the body. They're in the neurons. But if
well, technically consciousness, go ahead, sorry.
No, yeah, I think that's what I've concluded already, is that the body is the house. It's the platform for consciousness to show itself.
Right. So when you read old religious books or in any, like a book that says the kingdom of God is in flesh, it's in your body, it's in you. That's basically saying, in a nutshell, the kingdom of consciousness resides in the human body. This is the storehouse for consciousness to express itself in. It was made in his image. That's a trippy thought. Like we like to think that those people in the past, the ancient Egyptians and the mystery schools and all this stuff, like, well, they didn't really know science. That's bullshit. I think they knew a lot of stuff. And like Joe Rogan said, the dumb ones just outscrewed the smart ones, and the smart ones died off, you know, because there's too much proof of them knowing about the universe. They knew about like Jason Quitt's book shows that they knew about the spin of the earth. They knew about the spin of the sun before any of our history that we were taught in school. When we learned about this stuff, they knew about all this stuff. And I think that they knew about this in the mysteries too. They just didn't call it quantum fields. They just didn't, like, they called the quantum field of consciousness God, right? They called the human body the kingdom. It just made sense to people. Because they, like me, need storybooks. It doesn't also, man, I don't want to get polar about this. Remember, it doesn't take away from spirituality. Like, I know as I'm describing this, we're polar beings. So you might go, well, it's spiritual. Like, it's not this, it's that. You got to see, like, I still think divinity is magical and reasonable. I still think divinity is logical and mystical. It's still something we don't understand, but that's like the 2 in 1. You know what I mean? Like, that's why when you listen to people like in the New Age community, they get all upset about technology. And in the people in the tech community, they get all upset with the woo of the New Age community. But what consciousness and what life is really doing is bringing that right brain energy and that left brain energy together to grow, to experience things. And we're doing it on so many different levels. It doesn't have to be a polar thing at all. But it kind of makes it boring if we don't argue about it, doesn't it? Anyways, you know, not for me, you and me, Chris. That's not what I mean. Like, I know you and I could probably smoke a doob and talk about this for hours. But in my experience, once you start talking about something, people are polar, man. They're like, well, no, it's this, because if you're saying it's that, and it's like, I'm not talking about it this or that. I'm just talking about this side of the equation, right? Like, if you've ever done algebra and factoring, there is no this or that. There's just sides of the equation until you factor it down to the most simplest form. That's what I'm trying to do, you know. But I've been pounding
materialism.
coffee.
There's materialism that says that matter is primary and consciousness is secondary, and you have idealism, I guess, which says that consciousness is the fundamental reality. Then there's dualism, where consciousness and matter are both existing realities, but they're just operating on different realms.
Exactly, man. I remember the first person that understood my thoughts on that, made me feel so good when he said it, was one of the first guests I had on here, Laird Scranton, right? Laird Scranton was in the first Magical Egypt series, and his studies with the Dogon and all that stuff. And I told him, Laird, man, I feel like we have this polar idea that the metaphysical, the unseen world is this place that we should escape from, and it's better than the physical world. And then some people have the opposite idea, but the more I get into this, it's almost like they both need each other, right? It's a unifying, like a figure 8. And what we call magic is where the two circles meet on that figure 8. What we call the placebo effect is where those two places meet on that figure 8. And he said, you can go back and listen to the episode. He said, I got to tell you that everything that I've ever studied in all his research comes down to what you just said and what I just said. That it's a codependent relationship between the metaphysical reality and the material reality in order for this whole thing to work. And I know for a fact that was all intuition, and I have not done the studies that Laird Scranton has at all. Maybe I was just picking up on his vibe when I said it too, because we were both talking together, but that kind of proves my point even more.
Oh That's great.
I'm lit, man. I've been pounding coffee. Speaking of which, here's some 3-pound chicken wing. Dead Mouse. We got to do the break thing. Please support the show if you like it. And if your name is on the show sheets for helping us out the past 30 days, thank you so much. Your name's on there, Chris, because you supported the show too, brother. I love you all. We'll be right back. When we come back, I'm going to get into how the quantum field ties into this. You know, we talked about the tubes. Now we're going to talk about the ocean, and we'll get into Monroe's paper and that CIA document when we come back.
Wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Bumper stickers are a fun side hustle with low-cost investment that has built-in advertising to attract local customers in parking lots, rallies, gatherings, conventions, venues, and more. You could potentially sell these bumper stickers on consignment to local businesses, tattoo parlors, head shops, or any other independently owned store that might gear toward the fringe. Bumper stickers are great gift-giving ideas for friends and family. Also, a way to wake up your fellow travelers on the path without having to waste energy in tiresome debates. No car? No problem. Bumper stickers will stick to just about anything everything with a semi-smooth surface. Go to www.justbsme.com and get your bumper stickers today.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
And also co-host Chris Martinez is here with us too. Jan Little with the $9.99 super chat. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good deal. Appreciate that. Much love to you. How do y'all get to pick do y'all get to pick those little stickers? She's got a little cheerleader jumping up and down there. Thanks for your support. All right, so we just got through talking about hammer off the microtubule thing. We're kind of recapping everything that we talked about this week. Now we're going to get back into this document. You know, everybody calls it a CIA document, and it is a CIA document, but it wasn't the CIA. If you look at the document, it wasn't the CIA that wanted to go figure out what the hell was going on. It was the Army, the Department of the Army, the U.S. Army Operational Group, the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command from Fort George Meade, Maryland, sent, what did you say his name was, Chris? Wayne McDonald? Is that it? Lieutenant Commander.
That's right.
Wayne McDonald to the Monroe Institute to find out what the hell was going on. Now, we know, and they don't hide it in this document, that they were trying to find a way to exploit methods. If people can really explore consciousness, like the way that Robert Monroe was talking about, that the Army or whoever, I'm assuming it's the Army because it says it's the Army, it was seeing, is there any way we can exploit this, you know? So I'll skip the introduction because we've talked about this on the broadcast before, and I'm sure you've read plenty of stuff about it. But he introduces why he's there. This report is very thorough. It talks about hypnosis, transcendental meditation. It talks about the brain, the sensory cortex, the homunculus, okay? It talks about everything. The brain, it shows the front view, it shows a lateral view, it shows the motory and sensory cortex, the third and lateral ventricles of the brain. So he fills out a whole report about how the brain works and what it does, and he goes into Bentov. So he's talking about waves. So I'll skip all that big part and just let you know that this guy is saying there's an energy field of consciousness of waves. And as a result, according to Bentov, these waves will stimulate and eventually polarize the cortex in such a way that it will tend to conduct a signal along the homunculus, starting from the toes and on up. All right. This wave, and we call this the Kundalini, actually. The Bentov biomedical model as described in a book by Lee Sinella, MD, entitled Kundalini Psychosis or Transcendence. Waves of energy, Robert Monroe calls them. So we understand the gateway process. We understand hemisync. But when we get down into the role of resonance, brain stimulation, the quantum field, they have studies about this stuff, right? Here's an example. So part 9 in his report, brain stimulation. Now keep in mind of the microtubule thing too. Bentov's biomedical model shows that this resonance is of considerable importance since it is directly transmitted to and impacts upon the brain. The resulting vibration is received and transmitted into the brain itself via the fluid-filled third and left ventricles located above the brainstem. An electromagnetic pulse is then generated, which stimulates the brain to raise the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output, just as Dr. Tremlow observed in his research of the effects of hemisync. So they're talking about hemisync, unifying the two tones, the two frequencies, okay? The brain is contained in a tight membrane called the dura, which is in turn cushioned by a thin layer of fluid located between it and the skull. As the coherent resonance is produced by the human heart in a state of profound relaxation, it reaches the fluid layer surrounding the brain. It sets up a rhythmic pattern in which the brain moves up and down approximately 0.005 to 0.10 millimeters in a continuous fluctuating pattern. It's very small, but it does it. So the characteristics of this resonant behavior accounts for the body's ability to sustain this movement despite the minimal level of energy involved. In this way, the entire body, based on its own micromotion, functions as a tuned vibrational system which transfers energy in a range between 6.8 and 7.5 hertz into the Earth's ionosphere's cavity, which itself resonates at about 7.75 hertz of this process. So they're talking about how consciousness and these frequencies are keeping us awake too at the same time, or keeping us alive. But I'm going to skip all that. I would really like it if you guys, all you have to do to read this report from front to back, okay? And if you can even, like, if you have a PDF reader, there's a voice thing where you can click on it, and sometimes it'll read it back to you, like a voice will read it. But here's where he gets into holograms. All right. Energy creates, stores, and retrieves meaning in the universe by projecting or expanding at certain frequencies in a three-dimensional mode that creates a living pattern called a hologram. The concept of the hologram can be most easily understood by using an example cited by Bentov in which he asks the reader to visualize a bowl full of water into which 3 pebbles are dropped. As the ripples created by the simultaneous entry of the pebbles into the water radiate outward towards the rim of the bowl, Bentov further asks the reader to visualize that the surface of the water is suddenly flash frozen so that the ripple pattern is preserved instantly. So now just imagine that ripple pattern is preserved. The ice is removed, leaving the 3 pebbles still laying at the bottom of the bowl. Then the ice is exposed to a powerful, coherent source of light, such as a laser. The result will be a 3-dimensional model or representation of the position of the 3 pebbles suspended in midair. Holograms are capable of encoding so much detail that, for example, it's possible to take a holographic projection of a glass of swamp water and view it under magnification to see small organisms not visible to the naked eye when the glass of water itself is examined. The whole concept of holography, despite its scientific implications, has only been known to the physicists since the underlying mathematical principles were worked out by Dennis Gabor in 1947. So, I used to produce the show that by John Polk called the Quantum Hologram Matrix. All right. Hey, look, I'm going to be honest with you. John Polk is a friend of mine, probably not the smartest dude in the world, but intuitively he knew that we lived in a quantum hologram matrix. The materialist believes in materiality only because he can measure things, he or she, if you're a materialist, from a human body perspective. Right? If you're not in the human body, if you're a being in consciousness, you're not a materialist. You're not even in the body. Materialists only accept physical reality because they can only measure reality, because they only can perceive reality as being observed from the physical body, and that's what makes up reality. Chris, you with me, bro? I'm coffee rambling, dude. I'm so sorry.
I'm with you.
So
I just don't think I'm not a materialist. I think that I think they can work together, but I also don't think that they need each other because I've experienced disembodied consciousness with emotions of their own.
yeah.
So I think the emotions, yeah, I've met angry ghosts and sad ghosts. So, yeah, I think the consciousness includes your emotions. What do you think? I mean,
Yeah,
if you have
I mean,
a paradigm
totally.
shift,
Totally,
if
man.
you have a
Like,
paradigm shift and your whole perception of reality changes like mine did, my whole consciousness has changed. So I think there's actually levels to consciousness. Like when you're born, you're just barely, you're not even self-aware yet, I think, until you're like a few years old.
right.
You know, and
Right.
they
Yeah.
say you only see a couple colors when you're first born, and then you get like your sense of morality, in your teen years, usually, I think. And then, that's usually when you get your musical sense too. That's like another level of consciousness. And like I told you, in that book, Cosmic Consciousness, it says that comes around 35 years old or something like that. So I think consciousness in itself has different levels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. But as it relates to the holographic universe, I think it's cool to look at it like this. We understand the sharing of information through what's called bits. Okay. So everything that I'm doing right now, I'm talking into this mic, it goes out to the internet, it hits you in a matter of a second, but it does that through bits of information. A bit is like an 8-digit code of ones and zeros, and all these different combinations of ones and zeros make up data, right? So when I speak into this microphone, the crazy thing that happens, and this is just on a linear level, all right? The crazy thing happens is these bits break apart. They hit the router actually first. They go to the router, and then once they hit the router, they break apart. And then they come back together wherever your address of your internet address is. They come back together there from the fastest way they can. So that all of this information breaks apart, goes through all the wires, whatever, comes back together where you are perfectly. All of these bits of information. Now, we as humans have figured out how to do that through wave frequencies, through light and fiber optics and all of that stuff. So if we figured that out, which is amazing, and what do you think the creator or consciousness has figured out how to create? Because we're the mini part of creation, and we figured out something that cool. So when you look at these holograms, the feature of a hologram is it's efficient. It's billions of bits of information that can be stored in a tiny space. The pattern of the holographic photograph, for example, is stored everywhere. Like if you looked at a holographic photograph, the bits are not just stored in a line, it's stored everywhere. Isn't it crazy to think about? It's like a matrix, but stored in a holographic. Man, I'm starting to confuse myself now because this is when shit gets crazy. Because my brain's linear. I can understand how the internet works. But when you get into the holograms, they say that this stuff is like information is stored inside the hologram, everywhere in the hologram all at once. I don't know, man. It makes my brain want to break thinking about it.
Well, it's the same way all information is stored everywhere all at once. Like you're talking about communicating through me through material devices, but well, what if I'm communicating with somebody else without any material device and we're just you know what I'm talking about? I think that probably we didn't used to even have to talk to each other.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion because I could sit in the same room with somebody and know exactly what they're thinking without saying a word.
Yeah, and I think the hologram works on different levels too. Like if you look at, someone said in the chat the other day, Leonardo da Vinci said, his quote was, life, something like, there's no point in living life without love. Like what life would be meaningless without love, right? And Da Vinci also had this picture of the Vitruvian Man. And I remember one time I was reading Revelations, and the Bible and Revelations had this crazy quote that said, the kingdom of heaven had 12 had 12 sides, 12 walls, so to speak, and the length and the breadth and the height of it were the same. So that there's a three-dimensional shape. And the walls were shaped that of a man as of an angel. Well, if you draw like a man and you give it wings and then you draw a line around it, that's a pentagon, okay? And 12 pentagons is a dodecahedron. And if you look at the Vitruvian Man, where Da Vinci's got his arms out, you know, you could literally be inside of a video game, like a virtual machine video game, where if you extend your arms out and your legs out as far as you can, your sense of touch is only going to interact with the universe. Think about this. Think about like a virtual reality machine that had 12 walls, okay? And on those 12 walls around you is what you perceive as reality. So that whatever over there looks like it's over there, but it's not really over there. It's just consciousness putting it over there. But when my dodecahedron, not me the man, but my space, my aura field, my dodecahedron, like the Vitruvian Man shows you, moves over there to that space, I take in that data. It's still the same data. Am I making sense?
Just like a video game.
Just like a video game, right? And in order for all of our little dodecahedrons, or what they're calling Merkabas, to work in all of this virtual reality system that Thomas Campbell calls a virtual reality system, like we all have to be in these dodecahedrons, which is the kingdom of heaven. And where's the kingdom of heaven? In us. How the hell, like, all of this stuff is coming like together. Either that or my mind is putting it together. And if my mind is putting it together and I don't know the information and I feel intuitively right about it, then that means I'm remembering something. And if I'm remembering something, then that means I came from somewhere. I hope I'm not moving too fast.
Dodecahedron. That's like, it looks like a weird sort of round cubey shape, right? I'm trying to picture
the dodecahedron's a 12-sided shape, right? I think let me look this up. Yeah, it's a 12-sided shape. Each wall is a pentagon. Now read Revelations. The walls were that of a man, of an angel. That's the Vitruvian Man. If you drew a man and actually took the Vitruvian Man, which is like a man with wings, so to speak, and you just outlined it, you got a pentagon, okay? And then the length and the breadth and the width or whatever, that's length, width, and height. That's a three-dimensional shape. So what he's describing is a dodecahedron. And each tribe of the 12 tribes of Israel has a jewel on that wall. So those are just energies on each wall, so to speak. Okay. I don't know. This was like some kind of weird download I got. And that dodecahedron is how we operate in this virtual reality that Thomas Campbell is talking about. Like, I can't touch that wall over there. It's not inside of my dodecahedron. And sacred geometry shows the perfection of all this too, you know. So I perceive in this reality when I walk to my neighbor's house that my body is literally walking to my neighbor's house, and it's over there based on this reality and its coordinates. But really, it doesn't really exist. The virtual machine makes it exist. And that's why when I walk over there to it and I touch it with my avatar in this video game, I can feel it. Either that or, dude, I'm just losing my mind. I could be losing my mind right now as we speak live on the air.
I'm my mind is tripping right now too, because I'm imagining consciousness as a dodecahedron.
Not consciousness, but just imagine it as your reality field.
Okay, right? But what if it was? So what if my body didn't exist, but I still had a reality field, and I was hanging out in your room? Would you see me as a glowing dodecahedron?
No, I don't know. Then I think, well, at that point, you've figured out how to access you've figured out how to access the code behind the video game. So you're just floating around in the code, and you figured out how to come over here without bringing your body over here. So the consciousness matrix, right? The universe is composed of interacting energy fields, some at rest, some in motion. That's pure physics, right? It is, in of itself, one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. Now, this is according to the theories of Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, and David Bohm, a physicist at the University of London. The human mind is also a hologram, which attunes itself to the universal hologram by the medium of energy exchange, thereby deducing meaning and achieving the state which we call consciousness. The exchange between energies, the awareness of that exchange is consciousness. So with respect to states of expanded or altered consciousness, such as what Robert Monroe uses as the gateway process, the process operates this way. As energy passes through various aspects of the universal hologram and is perceived by the electrostatic fields which comprise the human mind, the holographic images being conveyed are projected upon those electrostatic fields of the mind and are perceived or understood to the extent that the electrostatic field is operating at a frequency and amplitude that can harmonize with and therefore read the energy carrier wave pattern passing through it. Now, that's the same damn thing that Hameroff was talking about with the microtubules, too. It all fits. It's so complex that I can't explain it with my mouth. When I read this stuff, it makes sense to me. It's almost like I'm remembering something when I read this shit.
Go with it then, brother.
Just go with it.
Go
right?
with it.
Just go with it. You know, it does.
You should look up Hammerhoff. He probably gives talks on a couple times a year.
Well, it all makes sense as to why things need to be polar. Like, we need to be under a certain amount of illusion, just a little bit of an illusion. That's the polar difference between the left and the right brain, so that we can exist in here. Because we're having to intake and outtake everything. We do everything like binary code. Even our life is like binary code, on, off. We eat, we poo. Right? That's the two pillars on the mystery schools, by the way. Same thing. We breathe in, we breathe out. We drink, we pee. If we take in emotions and we don't let them out, then we get cortisol and we get fat. Like, our battery needs to be balanced all the time for us to stay at a perfect health. Balance is like the key. And in the mystery schools, they say, what's the way? The middle way. The middle way is the path, or whatever. It's not just physical. It's metaphysical. It's all of this stuff works on different levels. That's how complex it is. That's why it boggles the mind. Because if you're polar, you start thinking, well, it's either material or metaphysical. So I can explain this one and I can explain that one. But when I try to put them together, that's where we get tossed up. But I think that's where the keys to everything is, Like the dodecahedron. When I play a video game, it's not a dodecahedron. It is it's like a vector that moves around in a 3D field, right? It's not that complex, but it's too complex for me to code, but I kind of understand it. I move the stick and my character goes around and it's made of code, but it's a different vector moving around in this 3D field that was built of it. And to me, it's like the same thing. The Vitruvian Man and the Revelations is talking about the kingdom of heaven, or that dodecahedron thing. It's just more complex, more divine. So your consciousness is in like this three-dimensional field, and you can look at it as a plutonic solid, because back then everything was plutonic solids. They were all about what's his name say? Straight lines. And so when our dodecahedrons meet with each other, or our aura fields, we could really feel that energy. But that's how we interact with reality too. Like if I stretched my arms out, like I was talking about earlier, I'm in my own dodecahedron. So what I see over there, the data that I'm taking in from over there may not actually exist, but it's a part of the collective consciousness, so therefore I see it, because we all are co-creating this together. It's fucking trippy to think about. And pardon my French, but it's really fucking trippy to think about. This is why people that get into this stuff, they start feeling like they're going crazy sometimes. I think like people lose their shit once, like you'll get downloads of information that you can't process, and then you start feeling like you're going crazy. And you and I have both seen that happen to people, dude. I know you have. I think you told me about it before, like, or maybe it was someone else. But I mean, sacred geometry shows us this stuff too. So then, like, consciousness doesn't have to be, I think consciousness doesn't have to be what, like that on and off switch that we were talking about earlier. I don't think it works that way. I think everything in our reality works in a binary fashion. I just don't think consciousness works that way. I think it's a fluctuating quantum soup that we all exist in. And that's why you can show up in my field as a ghost. Dude, you've seen ghosts before, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah. My dad, we were just talking about this before I started the show. Okay. And my father never, bro, he never talks to me about this stuff, but he did tonight. And he said, I was laying down in my bed and the cat, Leo, like lays beside him. Okay. So he lays right by his head and he heard a noise in the kitchen and it kind of freaked him out. And my father likes to keep everything pitch black and silent. There's not even a street light out here, so imagine how dark it is. But he can feel the cat. He can kind of see the silhouette of the cat. So he looks up and he even sees the cat look up like someone's in the kitchen. What's that noise? And he said the noise got louder. He just told me this like an hour before the broadcast. And what he realized later, he got up and walked into the kitchen to see what the noise was. The freaking cat, it was Leo that was in the kitchen. Now, he just said that Leo was beside him. He saw the cat beside him. He had his arms around the cat. He said he saw the cat look up at the noise. But when he went into the kitchen, it was the cat making the noise. Now, how trippy is that, dude? It freaked him out so much, he had to tell me about it. But that goes back to what I'm saying.
Oh, wow.
He's so used to that reality of that cat sleeping there, that his dodecahedron, his program, saw the cat there, but it also took in the data of the cat in the kitchen. And he had one of those glitches in the Matrix moments.
That's trippy.
You know, and if you say this to a new age kind of person, they're going to say, well, the cat's an ancient Egyptian hawk animal that comes from the 13th dimension. Like, no, like, yeah, okay. But his reality was the cat was still right there beside him. He felt it. He saw it. He's seen it. Even the cat looked and heard the noise with him. When he got up to go check out the noise, it was the cat making the noise. And bro, my dad doesn't talk about this stuff ever. He thinks I'm a kook, but he had to tell me this because it freaked him out. That makes sense. Like if something becomes real enough in your reality, or if you do something repetitive enough, or maybe his mind, because he was asleep, he was waking up, so maybe he was in like that hypnagogic place where he got to witness himself just for a moment of him co-creating his reality and experiencing it in some kind of trippy way. And a lot of times, I think when people say they have paranormal activity or they see ghosts and things, I'm not saying all the time, but a lot of times that's what that is. It's like a glitch. I think it's just a glitch in the code or whatever. And I'm only saying that metaphorically because I don't understand it all, you know. I'm excited because my father never talks about that stuff.
Do you think consciousness leaves one level of being and goes to the next? Like the cat, let's say, not to be morbid, but when the cat dies, do you think the cat will become another cat? Or do you think the cat will become like a cat angel? Or do you think the cat will evolve into a human?
Well, I mean, I don't know, like consciousness is consciousness. And obviously that cat is conscious. So I think if it's ready to be a human, it'll be a human. Doesn't a paranormal pussy, right? Doesn't
That's what.
doesn't I got to get some shirts that say that, dude, and put a cat on it. We'll sell the hell out of those.
That might be the ticket. That might be the golden ticket.
Yeah,
Nobody take it.
we'll make sure Wolf gets a cut of all that. That's funny. So, what did you just say, dude? I lost my train of thought. Paranormal pussy threw me off.
You said that you think if the cat's ready to be a human, it'll be a human. I
right.
think that's the case too. Like you can evolve a cat. Like my dog, he wouldn't have spoken, he wouldn't have known English. Now he knows English because I've trained him a few words in English. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Not that he speaks.
Man, I think consciousness is consciousness. Like, I think if it wants to be a cat or a human or whatever, like if it wants to experience being an ant, it's like taking it all in, you know? It's just taking it all in. But I mean, that doesn't make reasonable sense. It does to a certain extent. Like everything's just a data feedback of experience. But whatever, if that's true, then consciousness needs everything. It doesn't just need humans. It needs to experience good, bad, pain, happiness, ant, cat, human, all of it. And it needs all that data to understand either what it is or it's some crazy experiment. So I think that's where Rudolf Steiner got the idea. Well, that doesn't make sense based on reason alone. It can't just be like a data feedback system because things seem to evolve too. So if I remember his work correctly, he talked about things evolving from mineral to plant to animal to human, right? Wasn't that
Right.
Steiner?
Yep.
Yeah.
That evolves into all the Rosicrucian teaching as well. That's what the cross supposedly is a symbol of as well. The mineral world up into the plant and the animal, and then the higher level to the human. And then the next level would be angelic.
That's kind of a different thing than what is consciousness in the holographic field, but it is a cool topic though to think about. Like, is it just really a data feedback system like Thomas Campbell talks about, or is it evolving? And maybe it's evolving with us too, you know. And if you think about reality and sacred geometry, if you look at the program, you'll see everything comes into existence in that Fibonacci spiral. So why wouldn't we assume that consciousness is doing the same thing? The seed of consciousness gets planted. It's first a cell or whatever, a mineral, a plant, a human, then whatever's next after that. It could be doing that too. But I know by observing nature that everything that's physically alive in this so-called virtual reality seems to spin out of the smallest point and spirals out. You could see it in trees. The smallest point is a seed, and as long as the soil's good, it spins out. Now, it doesn't look like it's spinning out because we're looking at the freaking tree from our point of view, but if you look at it from the top, it's spinning out, you know, and the fruit is growing towards the light, right? Because the what is that? Chlorophyll, the greenhouse effect. But if you could see as it's twirling out. Like if it didn't have anywhere to go and it still did the same thing, all those limbs would look like a spiral probably. You know, just like all of the veins in our body seem to twirl out. And if that's why what's his name? Schwann. I had him on the show. He talked about torsion fields too, like everything creates in that way. So if we are in some kind of virtual reality, like Thomas Campbell says, then it creates its code in that spiral form for some reason. That's why I don't think the earth is flat, folks. Not because I have solid evidence that it isn't. It's because every fucking thing in nature, excuse my French, I'm tired of flat earth stuff. It's boring. But everything in nature seems to move out in a spiral form. But you're telling me we live on a chessboard. It doesn't make sense. You know, it just doesn't. So click away, flat earth people. I'm not going to validate you. I got to look more into that Planck stuff, though, dude. Like what you were talking about.
It seems like I think our consciousness is probably spiraling out as well, and that eventually it doesn't need the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense, right? It really does. It definitely does. There's so much to think about. Like that's why this like when you actually put the metaphysical and the science together, there's a lot to talk about. Like how does it work? How does it fundamentally work? When we explore consciousness, we get to experience all this stuff, how it fundamentally works. But the whole microtubule thing could be the thing that is like I don't know how to explain it. It's like the program that's in the Matrix that's in our reality that lights up everything. Those microtubules that we were talking about earlier, that lights up the program when consciousness is alive. Well, dude, this is how these shows go. Earlier we were talking about coma buzzes, quantum fades, hologram links, you know. 2025, here's coma whispers and spindles. Quantum fields, power tubes. Power tubes. That's kind of what they are. Like microtubules are the power tubes of consciousness, right? Holograms tie us together. So the void really isn't empty. So if the quantum field's an ocean of tiny energy waves everywhere, always, that's really not that spooky, just the stuff that makes atoms tick in your brain, so to speak. So it's the spark keeping microtubules humming. Spindles ride it like waves. I wrote that earlier, actually. It's like spindles surfing on like waves or what. So tiny straws in every brain cell, smaller than dust. They might catch quantum waves like the surfer, like antennas. Spindles need them to buzz. Anesthesia jams those things to fade you to black, fade you out. Your mind's a 3D picture from flat waves. Spindles are the rhythm. Quantum fields the power. Microtubules are the projector. And the void is the big screen that we keep rebooting onto every time we come alive or wake up from a dream. That's it, dude. That's it. No more. That ends the radio show. We broke the internet. I'm done. No more shows. My brain's starting to hurt. We're just going to get some t-shirts and then put like a kitty cat ghost and put paranormal pussy on it. And that's the new thing. We're going to just go into a t-shirt business.
You got to make a microtubule. You got to make a microtubule shirt too.
Man, that's impossible to even think about because I don't even know. I got to look up if we don't even have anything that can. Do we have microscopes that can see that? Because if we don't, then how do we know microtubules are even real? I mean, I got to look deeper into this, man. I just do because I feel like I'm going crazy talking about this stuff, but it's so awesome at the same time. It's like all the meth heads, you know, we can tear it apart and look at all the parts, but we can't put it back together. That's what the show feels like, you know, one big meth rant, but it's fun.
It's like you're trying to take apart the computer and figure out how the damn thing works instead of just fucking being happy that it receives the message.
Yeah, right. I've always been that way, though, man. I've always been that way. Like, I've got to know how stuff works because I'm fascinated by it, you know. And not only that, I'm fascinated by getting to explore it. Like when I read about the OBE experience, I wanted to know everything about like the out of body stuff that I could. And then at that point, I had to go experience it. You know, I had to go see if it was real. And when I realized that it was real, I was never the same again. Like you could call me, I've been on shows where they've called me a schizophrenic for saying that it's real, and I don't care because I experienced it and so many other people have. You can say what you want because you're stuck in your little box, and I'm so sorry that you are. You didn't step outside your hypercube. Or maybe we're still in the hypercube. Who the hell knows? Or your dodecahedron. But you should sometimes. What do you think, man? Is that enough to run with? Is that enough to call it a night? Or should we keep going?
I'm game for whatever, but I agree with what you said, man. I've been called names too before, but your reality is your reality, right?
Yeah.
You can't argue with it, man. Once you've experienced something, I'm fascinated with the fact that this consciousness exists without the body. That's what I'm tripping on.
Yeah, it's just where does it go? You know, that's all. I feel like these bodies could be like little mini USBs plugged into the quantum hologram matrix reality to take in data and send it back to the maker, you know. Because the maker is trying to figure out who it is because it didn't really have anything to relate to before this. Like it was Alpha and Omega. Wouldn't that suck, right? Like, I am the Alpha and Omega. I am everything and all things. It's like, well, then that means you're alone, you're lonely, and you're bored. You have nothing to relate to. I don't even know how the hell you could know who you are or what you are if you have no way to relate to anything. So it probably
that's what you and me are all about. I mean,
exactly.
That's what that whole idea is, right?
Yeah. And that's why everybody's like, I can't wait till I die and Jesus is going to come back on a white horse and take me out of here and I'm just going to be done with this prison planet. And you know what's probably going to happen? As soon as you die, you're going to pop right out of another vagina screaming, not knowing what the hell's going on because it wants to live. Damn, dude. Or maybe you get to experience bliss for a moment, but you'll come back.
I'm of the opinion that it's very much like a video game and that we choose the adventure, but we don't remember that we're playing. And then we just start from scratch. We don't remember anything. And, you know, that might be the evolution, is bringing the memories to the next life or having completed the mission and not having to return. I like that idea, man.
Or what if it's really about everlasting life? Like life. And so the alchemists kind of tapped into this a little bit. They could expand life a little bit. They understood this by the Philosopher's Stone, but they realized that energy was trying to transform into something through the soil. The quantum field of energy is trying to put its plasma into these physical dense environments, just like we put a seed into soil, so that it can rise and be born again. And our bodies and our experience is just some kind of like plant that it's trying to grow a fruit out of. And that fruit is us being born again into some other being. And that's what true alchemy is pure energetic transformation. Not just the Jungian alchemy or spiritual alchemy, or not just turning lead into gold in the, in your little puffer lab, or not in your spagyrics where you're making tinctures and stuff using plant alchemy, or what's known as spagyrics. But it's all of that is showing you what's really supposed to happen through your body. I don't know. That's the feeling I get. That if we do this right, if we connect with ourselves and each other right, that eventually we're going to become something greater. And I think Manly P. Hall talks about this too. Like, if you pay close enough attention, the human is evolving into something, not just a monkey into a human, but it's evolving into something more than human. That's what it's trying to do. And that's why everything's all crazy and chaotic in this world, because sometimes we're going through dissolution. But now I'm getting all weird.
You and I are learning the same thing at the same time, but I think there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people learning the same thing in their own way, that consciousness may not need the body. Like in your out of body experience, that's what you learn. And in my experience with dead people, we're learning the same thing in our own unique way. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're tapped into something that I can't. I can tap into. Dude, I know I have a certain gift. I think everybody has a gift. And it's one of those clairs. I think some of us can be more clairvoyant, more clairaudient. I don't know what the other ones are called. I can I can take dreams and interpret them very well, even if there's other people's dreams, but I don't do it. Because mine just interpreting mine alone take up all my time. You know, all of my time, because they're so complex.
But what I'm getting at is that's what we're evolving into, something different than human. We're evolving into where our consciousness, because of what we're learning, will survive. And maybe we'll bring that memory with us if we come back. Like they say some kids come back with memories of their past lives nowadays. I think we're definitely growing.
Oh, yeah. Look into that. But if you look into that, too, if it really is a quantum hologram matrix, then everybody's like, man, in my past life, I was a prince or a princess, or I remember this person that murdered me. Some kids have actually said that. I was murdered, and then they take them to the spot, things like that. But what if it's just a random memory that they're pulling from? What if they actually were so tapped in consciously that when they went into the collective field, it wasn't like I was this person, now I am this person. It was like I am everything and everybody, and I remember this.
It could be possible they're bringing back a memory that needed to be discovered.
Yeah, because I think we do that special thing. Like, I do believe in reincarnation, but I think when you go back into the soup, you're a part of everything. You might have some kind of heredity or a genetic ancestral tie to certain energy frequencies or something, but you could pick up a memory of somebody that wasn't anything near you in this earth life or the past earth life. You see what I mean? Like any memory, and then come back and all of a sudden you remember it. Oh, I remember this murder. Here's where it was. And I was this person, and that only works if we all go back to oneness and then come back to being human, and there's nothing in between, But it's just funny, like some people, you ever hear that? Like, I was a prince. Most people, you know what I hear more than anything? I was an Egyptian priest or priestess, or I was in Egypt. And it's like, you can tell they're kind of making themselves out to be special, like they have some secret special mission. But if you look at the theory of consciousness as this relates to it, we all were everything all at once. Even the Egyptian princes and princesses, all of us were. It might just be a memory that you picked or something. I don't know. I got to look into this stuff more, though, like Planck's distance, and I haven't even gotten into that yet. I'm just a conscious exploration dork, bro. But thanks for coming on and helping me wrap up the week, brother. I love you.
Appreciate it. Love you too, Joe.
You can go to bed. Did you drink too much coffee? I hope I don't make you late for work tomorrow, man.
Tomorrow's an easy day. Friday's always easy. Weekend's right around the corner.
That's right. The weekend's right around the corner. Thanks for the super chat, Jen. I really appreciate that. and any support, whoever supported the show. Make sure you go to ltvpodcast.shop. You can grab all the t-shirts. Get you a Void Walker hoodie. I'm looking forward to the time change this weekend. I love all you guys. Have a great weekend. See you in the Discord. Night. Thanks, Chris. He said,
Thank you.